Hi, I'm Anna James, author of the Pages & Co series, and welcome to Moon Lane TV. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my series of books, Pages & Co, including the brand new book, Tilly and the Map of Stories. I'm going to tell you a bit about the story so far, give you a sneak peek reading of the new book, as well as suggestions and writing activities if you want to be a book wanderer yourself. So, let's do a catch up to start with. So first of all, this is Pages & Co. So we've got book one, the red one, Tilly and the Book Wanderers. In this book, okay, there's going to be some spoilers here, okay, so you're warned. In this book, Tilly Pages, who is my heroine, she's an 11-year-old girl. She lives in Pages & Co, which is a bookshop owned by her grandparents. Her dad died when she was a baby, and her mum vanished not long after. Her and her best friend Oscar, an 11-year-old boy, realise that they are book wanderers, and what that means is that they can travel inside of their favourite stories, but also that characters sometimes pop out of their stories into the bookshop. They discover the book wandering community, which is based in the UK, that's based at the British Underlibrary, which is underneath the real life British Library in King's Cross. And they have various book wandering shenanigans. They visit Treasure Island, they visit Anne of Green Gables, they visit Alice in Wonderland, and Tilly tracks down some family secrets, which, a big spoiler warning, Tilly learns that she is half fictional, that her dad was actually Captain Crewe from A Little Princess, and that her mum has been trapped inside of a copy of A Little Princess by a man named Enoch Chalk. I'll stop there. The detail, you have to read the book for the details. Okay, so then we get to Pages & Co 2, Tilly and the Lost Fairy Tales, the blue one. So in this book, the kind of aftermath of everything that's happened in the first book is calming down. And it's set just before Christmas and over the Christmas period, the Christmas school holidays. And in this, Tilly and Oscar go to Paris to stay with Oscar's dad, who lives in Paris. And whilst they are there, they get embroiled in a book of fairy tales. Now, fairy tales are dangerous to book wander into because there are so many different versions of them that you can lose track of where you are very easily. But something is going even more wrong than usual in fairy tales. There are characters in the wrong stories, there's these big cracks in the stories, and book magic is leaking out everywhere. And Tilly and Oscar have been told that they mustn't go into fairy tales, which of course means that they do end up in a book of fairy tales, and all sorts of fairy tale shenanigans arise. They meet characters including the three bears, they meet Goldilocks, they meet Jack and the Beanstalk, and they realise, again, this is the big plot twist, they realise that a brother and sister called Decima and Melville Underwood, who have become, they are in charge at the British Underlibrary, they are the ones who are actually breaking the fairy tales on purpose to try and harvest the book magic, because they want to steal the immortality of stories for themselves. Now, Tilly becomes convinced that they need to find the Archivists. Now, the Archivists are a kind of mythical group of book wanderers who are supposed to help when things start to go wrong in book wandering, but nobody has heard of them for a really long time. But Tilly starts to kind of find clues, or be given clues, that she thinks are perhaps giving her a sort of treasure map, which might be telling her where to go. So, the end of this book, it's a big cliffhanger. Really sorry, I have had some complaints about the cliffhanger, but do not fear, for book 3 picks up almost straight away. So, book 3, Pages & Co, Tilly and the Map of Stories, is the brand new pink one. This is the new hardback. Isn't it gorgeous? It's illustrated, as are the first two, by Paula Escobar, who is absolutely brilliant. She's done the cover and all the illustrations inside. So there's no spoilers for this one, but I will say that it picks up almost straight after the cliffhanger. And as you might expect if you've already read the first two, it follows Tilly and Oscar following the clues that Tilly has found to try and track down the Archivists and see if they can help with the situation at the British Underlibrary. I'm not going to tell you anything else about the new book because I hope that you would like to go and pick it up and find out for yourself. So that's the Pages & Co series, 1, 2, brand new one, 3. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a little bit of a reading from, so I said no spoilers, but I suppose this is slightly spoiler because this is a reading from the middle of the book, but it doesn't give away too much, I hope. So Tilly and Oscar have been following the clues, and they've ended up deep inside layers of stories, and just when they think that all hope is lost, they hear a train whistle, and this is what happens next. For a moment, Tilly couldn't do anything but stand and stare at the train. It was unusually long, with many more carriages than they were used to seeing at stations in London. And it wasn't just the number of carriages that stood out, but their appearance. Each one looked as though it had come from a different train. There were old-fashioned black carriages, a sleek section of shiny matching ones towards the front, shaky wooden carriages, ones covered in brightly coloured peeling paint, some with windows, some without, and none of them looked like they should fit together at all, let alone stay on a train track and keep moving forward. The boy who had called to them, and who was waiting impatiently for a response, was tall and wiry, with copper-coloured skin and messy dark brown curls falling over thick-rimmed glasses. "We can't wait for you," he called. "We've just paused to drop something off. You're looking at a one-time only opportunity to hitch a ride on the Sesquipedalian." "The what?" Oscar called as another squeal from the train's whistle echoed in the air, and a plume of glittering smoke billowed overhead as the train prepared to depart. "The Sesquipedalian, and it's about to leave." "Are we getting on?" Tilly asked Oscar. "It's a real train complete with a real person going somewhere that isn't here," Oscar said. "What are we waiting for?" "But the Archivists," said Tilly as they walked towards it. "Maybe that boy knows how to find them," Oscar suggested. "If he's here, then he must know something useful." Tilly couldn't shake the thought of her mum, not to mention Orlando and George, and how disappointed they'd be if she failed in the search for the Archivists. But she couldn't disagree with Oscar's logic, and she didn't fancy getting lost in the labyrinth with no food or water or any way of contacting other people. The lure of a moving vehicle, not to mention another real person who might know more, was too tempting. The train had started to shudder back to life and was moving slowly along the platform, meaning Tilly and Oscar had to break into a jog to catch up. "Come on," the boy called, his arm outstretched to help them on board. "You go first," Tilly said, giving Oscar a shove so he was able to grab the boy's hand and yank himself up onto the wooden platform on the back of the last carriage. Tilly gritted her teeth and picked up speed, holding out her hand for Oscar and the boy. Her fingers were just brushing theirs as the train jolted forward and she lost contact again. "I am not getting stuck here by myself," she shouted, and summoned a last burst of energy. Just as the train rolled out of the station, the boys managed to get a secure grasp on her wrists and hoisted her up off the ground and onto the train, the three of them crashing onto the floor in an undignified heap. After they had disentangled their limbs, Tilly and Oscar stood up and faced the boy who had helped them. He was wearing a slightly too small assortment of clothing, bottle green trousers held up with braces over a not very clean white t-shirt. A mustard yellow scarf was wrapped round his neck several times, matching the fingerless gloves on his hands. On his feet were brown boots, one with normal brown laces and the other tied up with a purple ribbon instead. He looked like a character from a book, Tilly couldn't help but think. "I'm Milo," he said, sticking a slightly greasy hand out for them to shake. "Welcome aboard the Sesquipedalian." Tilly introduced herself and Oscar. "And I'm sorry," she said, "welcome aboard the what?" "The Sesquipedalian," Milo said, sounding it out for them slowly. "It means long words, or the sort of person who loves using long words. But we call her Quip for short." "I'm going to stick with Quip," Oscar said, shaking Milo's hands. "Thanks for having us." "You're welcome," said Milo. "So, what were you two doing in the labyrinth? You're lucky we were passing. This is a very new route for us." Tilly and Oscar exchanged a look, unsure of how much it was safe to tell Milo. He was certainly friendly, but after everything they'd been through so far, they were hesitant to share what they were up to with a stranger. "We're looking for someone," Tilly said vaguely. "Or rather, some people, we think, and we were given a map that brought us here, but we got a bit lost and none of the usual book-wandering rules seem to apply." "What's book-wandering?" Milo said, frowning at them. "Oh no," breathed Oscar. "You're not a book-wanderer?" Tilly said in horror. "Ah, no," Milo said, breaking into a grin. "I'm just teasing. Of course I'm a book wanderer. How do you think someone ends up on a train that travels through stories without being a book wanderer?" "So that's what this train does?" Tilly asked in wonder, not even bothering to be annoyed by the joke. "Yep," said Milo proudly. "We'd never heard of you before," Tilly said, "and my granddad used to be the librarian at the British Underlibrary." Tilly could have sworn she saw Milo wrinkle his nose at the mention of the Underlibrary. "Well, if you've come from the highfalutin official end of things, it's no surprise you've never heard of us. In fact, I'd be worried if you had. We operate on a strict need-to-know basis." "There are unofficial and official bits of book wandering?" Oscar asked. "Obviously," said Milo. "Pretty much everything has its official and unofficial bits, its open streets, its hidden alleyways, its rules, and its rule breakers. And the Quip and those who know of her are definitely from, if you'll excuse the pun, the wrong side of the tracks." "So what do you actually do?" Tilly asked. "We're in the business of the lost and forgotten," Milo said. "Stories and books in particular. And sometimes lost and forgotten people too. Those who need helping from one place to another or have something to hide. People come to us because we know how to find things and how to lose things. And we have an excellent success rate. We can get almost anywhere with this train." Tilly and Oscar looked at each other. Perhaps all hope of getting to the Archivists wasn't quite lost. So that's a little bit of a flavour of the new book, and you've also met one of the new main characters, Milo, who lives on the book smuggling train, the Sesquipedalian. Inventing the train and Milo are two of my favourite bits of writing this new story, and I hope that you enjoy meeting Milo and travelling on the Sesquipedalian as much as I enjoyed writing them. So if you are a Pages & Co fan, if you're a new or an old book wanderer and you would like to get a bit more involved with book wandering yourself, I have some writing activities for you. So first of all is the kind of classic book wandering suggestion, which of course is to imagine where you would go if you were a book wanderer. Which book would you read yourself into, and which bit of that book would you choose to go to? Would you go somewhere dangerous? Would you go somewhere safe? Would you go, like me, somewhere where you could eat a really good meal? Would you have what you needed if you suddenly were sucked inside of the book that you were reading now? Who would you be with? And write a story, or draw a picture, or do anything you like that you're inspired to do, imagining that you have book wandered inside of a book. Now, if you want a bit more of a challenge and something that's a bit more specifically inspired by Tilly and the Map of Stories, I would like you to come up with your own map of stories. Now, Tilly and Oscar are following a series of clues that lead them inside layers of stories. It's a bit like hopping from book to book to book. So think about if you were trying to hide something deep inside of a book, where would you hide it, and what clues would you give people to help them find it? Now, you can interpret this really any way you want. It could just be a series of books, or it could be kind of thinking about what might make up stories. If you've read the first books, you'll know that the end papers are a bit of a sort of scary place where people can get lost. Maybe you could use those. It's completely up to you. The brilliant thing about writing stories is that you can make up whatever you want. You can just, whatever comes out of your imagination, you can put that into your story. And it doesn't always matter if it doesn't quite make sense. Sometimes the best stories start from an idea that doesn't quite make sense. Get it down, write it down, enjoy writing, and then you can come back to it afterwards and worry about making it make sense. Go do that afterwards. If you do write about book wandering or come up with your own map of stories, I would absolutely love to see what you come up with. And you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, or on YouTube at A Case for Books. I would love to hear about your book wandering stories, and I would love to see your maps of stories. Thank you so much for coming book wandering with me. I hope that you very much enjoy the new book, Tilly and the Map of Stories. It was my favourite to write, I think, of the series. And some of the new characters in it are some of my favourite characters from the whole series. So I really hope that you enjoy reading it as much as I enjoy writing it. It is all about the things that mean the most to me: imagination and stories and bookshops and libraries and the power of imagination. So I hope if those are the things that you love too, you will enjoy reading Pages & Co.